Activate.
You did it after.
I did it right there, dude.
I love it. Thank you. So I couldn't edit it out.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to This Pink Cloud. I am DjKellyReverb. There we go. Welcome to the show. We are a show that is about multiple pathways to recovery, mental health, all that kind of good stuff. Please like, subscribe, and ring that bell. Speaking of mental health, everybody give it up for Chad Lamont.
Hello. Hey. Hey. Hello. Hello. Hey.
How you doing, man?
Hey, man.
You all right?
Hey, brother. I've been.
You're a little under the weather?
I've been above the weather. I've been under the weather. And I'll tell you what, one thing I'm right now, I'm not even with the weather. I'm a little bit underneath it.
All right.
You know what I mean?
Fair
Hell
enough. Yeah. All right. And we are excited to have my new good friend on. We found each other on Instagram. Alexa just celebrated 10 years clean from cocaine. But excited to have you on all the way from Los Angeles, California. We've got my good friend Alexa. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for being on, man. And I always like to say that you are California sober. But I saw your post and I was like, oh, you should be on, because I always like to have people that are in the industry on about to talk about navigating some of those pitfalls of the industry, and some of them happen to be things that we were involved in.
It does get to be slippery out in our field. So
yeah. There is a couple of unique workplace hazards that aren't necessarily normal.
That is very true. I almost literally keep telling friends about, like, every time, like, playing shows, I'm like handed bags of Coke and I'm like, no, I don't want this. Like, it's such a thing. Like, I'll play, dude, congrats, that was sick. And then here's like a handshake with a bag full of Coke. I'm like, nah.
Yeah, that happens. That happens for sure. Well, okay, so let's get a little bit of your backstory. I know you're from the Chicago area, but let's get a little bit of your backstory and how it all ties in.
Okay, so I'm from Chicago. I was a great student my whole life. I was straight A's, like Dean's List, honor roll, all of that. And at 18, the very first drug that I did was actually cocaine. I had friends or at parties had said that was like a really cool drug and that they enjoyed it. But then when I guess decided that I wanted to try it, every friend was like advising me, don't do it. You don't want to. At that point, one of my friends was hooked on crack, and I told him, hey, I wanted to try Coke because I heard it's fun, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, don't do it. Like, literally warned me of how bad
it's the Dewey Cox. It turns all your good feelings into good feelings. Yeah.
It's a nightmare.
And he warned me about it, and I had because I didn't know anybody that like sold Coke or where to find it. And then I asked friends like, "Yo, could you get it for me?" And they did. They like warned me, got it for me, and we did it together. And it was this crazy quick rush of like, "Wow, this is really different." But I was like, hella like alert and like amped.
Yeah.
And then that spiraled into me flunking out of college the years later. I was selling drugs for years.
Well, you had to supply the habit.
And yeah, it just became like a thing. I was always grabbing it, and then all of my friends, like the friends that I was making at the time, were also doing it. So we were doing it together. And then I've always been good at finding things, whether that's samples, plugins, or in this case, finding drugs. So like I was very where do I get this thing? And I'd get good stuff. So then people would ask me for it, and then I'd keep doing it. And I definitely did a lot that I don't know how I survived the days of doing it. Like there have been days I was probably doing an 8-ball or so within me and my friends, like very like frequently.
Right. So, now, were you like drinking heavily with this, or was it just mainly, cocaine by itself?
So I definitely drank, but I don't think I drank as heavily as I did during certain periods of my DJ career. Like I drank, and I don't think I had like drinks per se. Like I definitely drank and was partying often, But the biggest thing was like, let me do a line. And I would do that all the time. Like that was essentially my celebration. Like, great day, let's do a line. Bad day, let's do a line. Yeah, your friends come over, let's do
Right.
just like the thing more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here and
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
It wasn't as often. And I did that at least 3 to 6 months before I even smoked weed for the first time. Like when I did weed, I was like, this sucks. Like I didn't like weed because compared to like starting with Coke, I'm like, this isn't at all what I want. And
Right. Yeah, I mean, well, weed was like kind of like a downer, dude. And like the whole cocaine thing was like, hey, I feel badass and I can do anything. You feel bulletproof.
Yeah, it literally inflates your ego that you're unstoppable. You could do everything.
Right.
And yeah, it was a long journey. Like I said, I flunked out of college. I was going to Columbia College in Chicago, and I made Dean's List my first quarter there. And I didn't start Coke until the summer after high school. So 18 was when I first did my first drug, Coke. First quarter of Columbia College, I made Dean's List. So that ended around like December or January. By the next, my scores were dropping just because my usage was going up. I was missing classes. I was falling asleep on the train to school and just not going. And I flunked out a year and a half. So very crazy turn of events from that.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure.
Go
ahead.
I was working in finance too. I was working at like Washington Mutual. That was a job that like my mom was almost kind of insisting me to get. And when I was falling asleep while like at the cash register while like ringing people up, I was like,
yeah, that's not a good look.
And the manager came up to me, he's like, you should go home. And
right.
So I wasn't doing very good, and I'm very grateful to that all of that is in my past, because
Yeah, well, so let's get into like, how does that go? So then you're flunking out of school, but then where does it go like from there? And then also, when does the gender identity part start to come in?
So back in Chicago, at that period of my life, I definitely identified as like a cross-dresser.
Okay.
If I don't align with that, at this point, I align as trans femme, non-binary kind of thing. So I don't feel wearing other genders' clothes. So that's always kind of been. But I guess I've been in therapy for years, and part of me feels like I was numbing that side of myself because fear of getting found out with drugs, kind of thing. Like there was a long period of time where I just didn't like myself. And it could not thinking I was good enough for stuff, or me being this weirdo or whatever. And it could be like a mixture of all of that. But I definitely spiraled. It could also be like growing up. I grew up with a single parent. My mom literally raised me, and my parents got divorced when I was like 5 or 6, and probably around like 16 or 17, he had moved to go back to Mexico because he's like, I don't like it here anymore, and he just like left. And then that's hella traumatizing. So that could have also need to then get high or do this or whatever, because I mean,
well, you're trying to feel comfortable, and like it's definitely traumatic when dad just up and splits, man. I get it.
So that was a factor that probably could have contributed to the drug use. So I was doing drugs. Let's see, I started 18ish. I was working at Washington Mutual like through my 20s, and sometime around like 22 or 24, I was at my worst, and I was probably up 3 days in a row, 6-7 days in a row. And once you break the 3 days in a row, you start to see things that aren't like there. Like
you start to see those shadow people,
and then the paranoia, someone's outside, and all of that.
Yeah.
I think I was up for like the second or third day in a row, and my mom had just driven my sister to school, and I was like literally like cracked out, still pacing, and I'm like, I have work soon, and I'm like, I almost just hit the point where I can't do this anymore.
Sure.
But like leading up to that, I had done so much coke, my nose wasn't even working. Like I couldn't even snort it when I wanted to. I would then like through my mouth because I still needed the fix, but like my nose was like fucked, so like I couldn't actually do coke normal way. So like I was like,
did you have some like permanent damage from the cocaine use?
No deviated septum. I've had other nasal conditions, which I guess could have been the result of that. I had nasal surgery a couple years ago. One was a triple ablation, which I guess are like the congestors. And then the other one was a nasal stenosis, where I guess one nostril semi collapses on itself, which could be because of the use or whatever.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I had those 2 procedures, but luckily I never had a deviated septum or anything like none of the hole in the nose that I've heard is very common.
Yeah. No, I've heard that too. So what happens then after, I mean, it never really graduated to like meth or anything or any kind of amphetamine, did it?
So I have done meth probably lifetime 5 or 6 times.
Okay.
And I don't remember when that was in the journey of drugs, because as I said,
Right.
around like 22 or 24 is when I'm like, I can't do this anymore. So my mom drives my to school, and I'm literally cracked out, and she's backing the car in the garage, and I go in there and literally look at her in the eyes. I'm like, Mom, I have a problem with drugs. And that was kind of my first time of like, I'm having a hard time with any of this. Probably a year or two before, she sat me down. Like, I stopped at the house to pick something up, and she looked at me, and my birth name is Mark, and she looked at me and she's like, Mark, are you doing drugs? And one of my biggest regrets is literally looking her back in the eye and saying no. And I was high as fuck. And I was like,
right.
Mom, I love more than anything. And I'm like, and how here I am just like lying to you. So when I got to the point where I literally looked her in the eyes and I'm like, I have a problem with drugs, she knew, but was like surprised. And I guess that was the beginning of a long recovery journey.
Sure.
From there, I told her, one, I can't go to work because I was like way too cracked out. And I had done it before, but I still fucked up or whatever. But like, I was like, I just can't. So she called me off for like a week. And then my mom's plan was to have me do like rehab to see if that would help. And I went to a bunch of consultations, but all of them wanted me to do intensive inpatient, and that just didn't feel right. I'm like, I don't think that I need that to be able to like beat this. Like they're like, we can hear this and that. And we went to like 3 or 4 places and they all were saying the same thing. What have you done? And it was this and that. And I'm like, I don't know that I want to do this. And I guess how I got clean was, one, I distanced myself from most of the friends that I was doing coke with, but also told my mom, don't let me lock my door. Like if I'm locking my door, that's a huge chance for me to like, and then like do it.
Right.
So like, I was one thing, the door closed, and I guess for like a year, so it kind of sucked because like I felt like I had no freedom, but that was definitely a good step in the journey. You asked about meth, so I don't know where in the journey it was. Like I had done meth.
Right. Well, I didn't know because sometimes people like, I mean, out of convenience and a price point, people turn to meth. So, that sometimes can be part of people's stories that, like cocaine.
Well, here's the thing is I do know that. So when I did it, I realized, one, how much I did like it, but I knew how much I slipped because of coke. So early on, I'm like, no, I can't do this. Cause like I realized how like, I know how bad I had gotten with coke. So I'm feeling that, that the is probably near the end phase of the coke, but I was like, I can't one and then jump to another. Like that's not a smart move.
Right. Well, at least you had the wherewithal to actually notice that. I mean, because not everybody does. Everybody's like, oh, well, it's cheaper. Let's go do it. Let's keep the party going.
And it lasts longer. But like for me, I realized how just from randomly trying it, I started selling it. I flunked out of college, almost lost my job, and just kept like spiraling. I'm like, what is this going to be? I'll literally be dead at this point. So like, I should just like not. And again, it was fun, but I was like, this is just not something I should like dive into. So around the 24-ish, as I said, I was being cleanish, and I guess I had various cycles of being sober at that point. Like that's where it sort of began. That first cycle, maybe I did like 3 months sober, whereas I wouldn't drink even, I wouldn't do drugs of any sort, and I would kind of essentially stay home. If I'd be out, friends were chopping up coke, it would be really like hard to like see it because like I want it or this and that or hey, do you want one or all of that, and that was a process.
Right.
And then I relapsed, and I was doing it again, not as crazy as it was before, but like still like just basically had fallen off and back in the I need to do it again. And
sure, you had dialed it back kind of a little bit or no?
Significantly, but it just still wasn't like what I realistically should be doing.
Sure, yeah. It was still hindering probably your overall functionality.
Everything, yeah. And then the next cycle was maybe a little bit more than 6 months, maybe like 9-ish months or whatever, where I was like,
okay.
I was drinking also, but maybe not for the first few months, but like I just didn't do coke.
Okay.
And then fell off again. And then that one was like a pretty bad fall. Like at that point, I started playing with psychedelics, which I actually like psychedelics because they've mentally helped me balance, and like I guess.
Right. And we have people on the show like that talk about psychedelics and recovery all the time. So I definitely, personally, I think there is something to that if people aren't using it as an excuse to just party. You know what I mean? I think it's definitely therapeutic.
When I first started with them, I definitely used them for the sake of like getting fucked up. But as I got older, I was like, this is more like medicine wise than it is like, let me get fucked up and like, let's get lit kind of stuff. Even though obviously you get lit from it, but that was a long shift to get to like that part.
Right.
The longest then streak at that point was like about a year clean. And at that point, I didn't drink. I feel like the first 6 months I didn't even go out just because I was like trying to like beat this thing. I was like 25, 26-ish at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then at some point fell off. But at that point, when I fell off, I got a new connect that like probably got the best stuff that I'd ever done. But at that point, maybe part of me had shifted to some degree because I just needed it less. At that point, I realized, I guess, this is a weird shift, but I went from the addict to more the recreational user, which I no longer like do it in party, whereas I would do it and a gram might last me a month. Like I would do a couple bumps here or there, and I was kind of okay-ish at that kind of point. Whereas like I'm not doing it crazy, like it's way more under control. And then I was still selling at the time because I guess as I kept finding good stuff, people, hey, you could get the stuff for me. So like I was always still kind of around it then. And it was March 29th, my birthday of, 10 years ago. So now I'm 38. So it was my 28th birthday. DJing a bar in Forest Park, and a batch that I had was like really good. And I hadn't done it yet. And friends were like, this is so good, blah, blah, try it. And I did it, kept DJing. And then I went to the girl I was dating's house at the time. And she's like, what's wrong? I'm like, nothing. And I was like hiding it from her because I guess she never like really knew about it.
Okay.
But then at that point, like when I came clean about like having done it, it broke her. And then I was talking to my sister about it, and she had told me that like when I was at my worst, she wrote like in school like a letter about how like her brother at the time was like hooked on drugs and literally losing their life and this and that. I'm like, damn. So like, I guess at that moment I realized how I'm doing this for fun and all, but like I'm hurting myself, and now I'm hurting people that like love me. My sister,
you're hurting people that you care about. Yeah.
And that was like, I don't need to do this anymore. And from when I quit Coke, I wasn't quitting everything else. I just like quit Coke. Like, I guess my kind of initial thought was like, I guess I could do everything else besides this. So I would do Molly at the time and still do like psychedelics. But then just getting older and getting more distant from it, I'm like, I don't need really any of that.
Sure.
And that was the last day that I had done Coke, like throwing everything away, probably for the 1,000th time, like throwing away cars or like
well, I was gonna say, well, I want to get to the solution and how it worked out, but like let's throw to a commercial real quick. We've got Max the Axe, our good friend at Lone Star Injury Attorneys. If you go to thispinklawyer.com, it will take you to the Lone Star Injury Attorney site.
Assuming the internet is up.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And
because if the internet's down, you're probably not going to go there.
He practices in California and in Texas, so be sure and hit him up, and he will get you the maximum results for your personal injury needs.
And you should just call him and be like, hey, man.
Hey, what's
Chad
up, buddy?
Kelly said, what's up, man? You should just be like, hey, man.
Hey,
exactly. Brother. Hey, brother, you good?
Because he's not busy at all.
Hey, brother.
And we also have some new tracks out streaming and actually free downloads and all that good stuff. This one is actually going to be the remix of our theme song, Activate, which is out streaming now by our good friend Falcone.
And congratulations to him on 12 years.
Yeah, he actually has 12 years. So
hell yeah.
Straight up. All right, and we are back. The Activate is actually streaming on all major platforms, and then the Arcade Fire is actually available for free download if you go to soundcloud.com/KellyReverb. There's a whole list of all of our remixes there that are free for the taking. But anyway, yeah, that reflector is a good one.
Yeah, I love it. I like it.
I like
it.
that
I like
a
it, the
lot.
arcade fire, because the arcade fire is cool because nobody done it before. I like it.
All right. Well, back to Alexa. So you had just, I guess, basically on your 28th birthday, figured out that, for you that cocaine wasn't the path to go. So did you? I mean, as far as recovery goes, was there any conventional rehab, or was there, I know you mentioned that you went to rehab, or they wanted you to go to inpatient therapy, but was there anything like that, outside? I mean, was there a 12-step program? Was there, cognitive behavioral therapy, or just therapy in general, or, what was going on?
It says off the air.
Oh, you should be on the air now.
Even though it says your audio in the recording?
I don't know why it says that. Yeah, you should be good to go.
Okay. So no, I never actually went to a rehab. What worked really well for me was just building like a support system to help me not fall off and basically lose all of that. Like I learned to, or at least I tried to just distance myself from it, and essentially that worked. That was 28.
Okay.
When I was getting to my 30th birthday. I was having like midlife crisis because at that point I was trying to start producing music, and life wasn't giving me what I wanted to at the time for that. I was working finance. I hated it. The
Right.
relationship was a little bit sour. I was like, I need to not do that. And I had kind of a dream that called me to this city. And before moving, I told myself the one thing that I know, everything that I want to do in this music industry is very obtainable. But I know that the
Mm-hmm.
only could derail me would be cocaine, because it definitely derailed me for many years earlier in my life. So I was like, I gotta just not do that. And when
Right.
I first came out here, I definitely got immersed more around cocaine as soon as I came out here, which was kind of crazy.
Uh-huh.
Chicago, but it's because I guess I got deeper into the scene or whatever. But I didn't
Uh-huh.
need to. And I was just like, that's whatever for me.
Right. Well, you kind of knew that. I mean, well, and I think at some point we know, we get to know ourselves. And at some point you were probably just like, hey, this is going to not wind up good.
There was so many people would say, let me just do one line. And
Right.
in the years I had done it, there's no such thing as one line. One
There's
line.
no such thing as one line or one drink or, all of that stuff. I mean, I guess there is for some people, but, not
Well,
people that have.
this with cocaine though. Like with cocaine, it
Yeah.
literally it runs out almost so fast that it's like that itch comes back right away. So I'm like, what am I gonna do one line for? Then it's just gonna be more and more, and then I'm
Yeah.
like, whenever I've been seeing it, and I'm like, could I do it? I'm like, what is that gonna do? It's a night. My nose is gonna be fucked. I'm gonna sleep like shit or not sleep, and
Right.
I just the cost of it, or the what I'm giving up in it, and if I did it, it just isn't worth it anymore. And at this
Right.
point
Yeah.
in LA, I'm living as myself. So I came out 3-ish years ago.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, LA is not a cheap place to live.
that is correct. And
Yeah.
apparently, just from I have friends here that definitely buy all of this stuff, do all of these things, and
Uh-huh.
shit seems more expensive here, drug wise, than in Chicago.
Right.
So
Oh
in
yeah.
Chicago, my cost wasn't the highest because I mean, since I was getting it, essentially my cost was cheaper back then. But
Right.
I just never needed to do it since coming out here. So since
Well,
being out here,
so let's say you go out to LA, and what were your goals in LA? I mean, because you were kind of miserable in doing what you were doing. So what did you what did you go out there to do? And then were you able to do that without having like a regular day job to supplement the income, or how does that go?
so I was DJing in Chicago, and my buddy Jesse planned it, or he gave me this tip that spiraled into this great thing. He's like, if you make your own edits, you'll get better time slots. And at that point, I had no clue how to produce on Ableton or any of that.
Uh-huh.
And I got an Ableton push shortly after that, and I had no clue what I was doing, but I felt like Eric Pritz, and I had a blast, just like hitting things. I'm like, yo, this is cool.
Right.
And when I came out here, ultimately, my goal was literally to just get better time slots and learn how to make music. But by the time I was out here for 3 months, I just kind of fell in love with writing music. Like, I even quit DJing, sold all my equipment. I'm like, I don't really want to do that anymore. So I had a whole like pivot shift kind of thing where like I don't need that anymore. Like I'm at a different maybe because when I DJ'd, that's when my drinking was probably the heaviest. Not when I started Coke. So like, because I know at one point there was one bar that I would play at that during my set I had pictures of like vodka Red Bull, but I would drink like 2 of those, which a pitcher is what, 4 or 5 drinks. So I'd be like hammered DJ. That was everyday thing I was doing, like Thursdays.
Hammered DJ and wired, yeah.
So it was just like
no, I get it.
So I come out here and I'm like not DJing as much. I'm like, I just don't like it. Just didn't align with me as much. I'm just wanting to produce. So the goal was essentially produce and play festivals because I still love performing, but I didn't want to like play all the time, be in that environment. So when I quit my job in finance, I had enough money saved to not work for 1.5 years. And at that point, because I had not really produced any full songs, I just focused on writing. Let me get better at creating music and learning this program, because Ableton, when you're starting out, it's very, very daunting. You're like, how does any of this work?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
But just kind of kept writing. About 1.5 years into living here, I knew that I needed to get a job then to like afford living out here, because it's not suddenly like, hey, I make music and suddenly I'm set. Like, no.
Yeah, right. It's not like, oh, here's a contract to ghostwrite for everyone, like, or so, just, oh, here, we're going to give you a full album deal.
If only it was like that, that'd be cool.
Yeah. Right.
So at that point, I'm like, I need to get a job, but I didn't want to do the 9 to 5 because I realized that just no longer was me. Like, I feel like I'd done that so long, and I'm like, a whole new chapter of my life. So that's essentially when I broke 9 to 5 and I started doing Uber. And at that point I was doing Uber full time, which not a fun thing. Probably don't recommend, but I'm grateful that it gave me the freedom to like, I could work whenever I want to work.
Right.
So that's been a really cool thing. I started I was doing that full time at one point. And at this point, most of my money does come from music. Maybe I have to do Uber maybe 10 hours a week if it's like a slow music week. And in music, I put different artists, I engineer them, all mixtures of stuff like that. So sometimes,
so you're helping other musicians in the studio, so to speak.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. Are you doing like any kind of Ableton lessons?
No, but that is definitely something that I need to start soon, because I was talking to a few friends about it and they're like, you know so much about it. I'm like, true. So that's not something I've done. That's definitely a very soon chapter that's coming for me.
Right.
Like I keep like, I'll be working with somebody, they're like, you're the fastest person I know in the DAW. And for me, I don't even think about it. I'm just like,
right. Like, yeah. Chad's like Chad's kind of Rain Man, like when it comes to that too.
Like I felt
like wait, what was that?
I've never been super musical because I never was raised musician or stuff like that. But me just learning tool and how to like make this work for whatever I'm trying to do is just help me whatever. Like I'll draw in, I'll be moving it super like, oh, like that sounds cool, and yeah.
Right. So, I got you. Well, okay, and then I guess the one part that we hadn't really touched on is you were talking about how I guess you were cross-dressing, but then where did the whole gender identity and how did that tie in, with your usage / recovery?
As I said, for a period of time, I definitely didn't like myself, so I feel like I was numbing that with either alcohol or with cocaine or whatever. When I came to LA, as I said, I switched focus. I wasn't out a ton.
And well, were you like beating yourself up because you thought like, oh, it's not acceptable for me to want to dress like a woman, or what?
I just almost was more embarrassed of getting found out, and I guess I didn't think further of that.
Okay. Yeah.
One time a friend was over at my house when I was in Chicago, and he like found a drawer where I had stuff in, and I like got so embarrassed and just like was weird about it.
Right.
When I was in LA, everything I had, I literally just like threw away or like donated it, like the church things. I'm like, I just don't want to get found out. I'm moving. This is a whole new chapter. This is behind me.
Okay.
part of me thought that I guess I could just leave that part of me behind or whatever. I was like, this is
Right. Okay.
so me to. And then the relationship that I was in before moving out here, we were doing long distance for a while. That ended
Uh-huh.
around 2017. And then at 2018, I was living in a house with a bunch of guys that I'm good friends with or whatever. But I realized that though I was good friends with them, I felt also so distant in lots of our thought patterns. I was like, this doesn't feel right all the time.
Right.
Sometimes it was
Uh-huh.
just station or stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
And then um, maybe the spring of 2018 into summer,
Uh-huh.
um, I was like super depressed, and something prompted me to go back to Victoria's Secret, and like I bought clothes again, and it almost
Uh-huh.
like I was like something has been missing for a minute from my life. And
Right.
then I was like, journaling when I got back home, and I was just like thinking, and somewhere in my phone was like the journal entry that I made that like I guess I've always known that it's been more than just clothes, because I was like, wait a minute, and it kind of just kept clicking for me.
Uh-huh.
Um, so shortly after that, I started therapy
Okay.
to to another person how I felt, because at that point I didn't tell anybody, like family didn't know, friends didn't
Right.
know.
Well, I
Um,
mean, it's a real thing, and it's tough to like just process on your own why, and you probably have that, oh, I'm not normal feeling, because, I don't know anybody else that's going through this.
Correct. And the friends that I had in Chicago, they were cool friends, but at the same point, I didn't necessarily feel safe to tell them how I felt. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
sometimes they would joke with each other and call somebody a faggot, this and this. I'm like, if that's how you're saying in
R-
a joke, how do I tell you, hey, I don't always feel male? Like, that's not
right.
easy to say when I'm already insecure about it, but then people were saying like that in conversations to each other.
Yeah.
So
You don't want
that
to open yourself. Yeah. You don't want to open yourself to ridicule or them to treat you differently because you're a certain way.
correct. So at that point,
Right.
that's probably why my drinking was also heavy, because I'd be around them and was feeling certain ways, and I just didn't feel like I could.
Right.
So therapy for years, as I said, around 2018, um, 2019, I was having breakthroughs and more accepting myself, but just more comfortable with myself.
Okay.
Um, I think I started kind of going out in the world around like 2019-ish, 2020.
Okay.
COVID was pretty hard because of like not being able to go out, but like I was going out in the world, but it was almost like, and it was almost because like my therapist advised me, he's like, just think of like just don't be afraid of things. And like leaving the house initially was like nerve wracking, and then it just like became whatever.
Right.
Uh, Leading up to that, like I had emotional depressive bursts that I would experience, and I'd come out to a few friends, but not like in person. Like I guess I was terrified to say the words "I'm trans" or "I don't feel male."
Right.
One friend came out to that I'd written music with that was based in UK, and I came out to them via like a letter, or I think like just I feel like we were emailing or DM, and I kind of told him, and he's like, "Well, you've been honest with me," and I'm like, "It's like, well, I'll tell you now, like." I was born female. I was like, wait, what? So that was really cool.
Right. Yeah.
I up with a friend. He came out like, well, I'll tell you about me now. And then like, damn. And then we had a cool talk, but like still couldn't say it in person. Like this was like DMs or email. And
Uh-huh.
then another depressive burst. And I had a friend that was pan, queer, or whatever. So in
Okay.
talking, I was like, just the secret I was keeping was like eating me alive. So I just wrote, like journaled or whatever, and I wrote essentially like a 5-page letter telling her like how I felt about like, yo, I don't feel male and this and this. And
Right.
cool is when I sent it to her, she read it. Her first thing is like, one, you're an incredible writer, but two, I'm here for you anytime. So I guess that
Right.
was a glimpse of realizing that I had really good support people here, and I didn't feel like I had that in Chicago.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I mean, I think in California, it's probably a little bit more, I guess, acceptable
It's
for that. Versus, even. Go ahead.
it's a lot more normal. I feel like I have a lot more queer friends in general, even before I came out here in general.
Right. Well, yeah, and then I mean, so like as far as sorry, we're having a little technical issue here in the studio, but yeah, as far as that goes, like I mean, where with the cross dressing, I mean, was there like because I think you had mentioned that you had a girlfriend before, so I mean, how does that go ahead?
She never at all knew about my cross dressing cycle.
Okay.
In fact,
Well,
I've never.
and I mean,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
No, she just never like at that point. I didn't tell anybody. So like, if I wasn't staying at her house, I would probably be cross dressing at my mom's house or whatever. And
Right.
when I was at my mom's house, I'd be doing coke all night and just stressed how I felt I needed to be.
Sure.
And like that was a long cycle of that, of doing coke and doing this and
Right.
just
And I mean, is there ever like, I mean, is it more of just a cross-dressing identity thing, or is it a sexual orientation part to it, or you know?
more gender identity. Like I've realized when in living out here, and I've talked to like before coming out, I've realized that my closest friendships during most of my life have been with my female friends. Like I've aligned
Okay.
more in thought process with them.
Okay.
Um, Sexually, no, like I'm not attracted to men, so that's
Okay.
at times an issue when dating because like men will come up to me and hit on me, and I'm like, that's not really what I'm into.
Yeah. Right.
So like I don't view it as clothing based. Like for me, I just view, for example, the clothes that I wear, whether it's a mini skirt or whatever, is just my clothes. Whereas at
Mm-hmm.
one point I felt like I am a boy wearing girl clothes, and that's very
Mm-hmm.
much how I feel now.
Right.
And my brain's
Well,
been
so
helped, which has been awesome because yeah.
well, what were
But
you gonna say? I mean, like, did you have like, I mean, so in order to for you to accept yourself, I mean, that take a? I mean, what would you credit that to? Like
I'll
a
get
lot of your therapist, or
um I'll get to that one in a sec. So
oh yeah, sure,
therapy was a huge part of that one. Therapy gave me the strength to start telling friends. Like I
okay,
practiced telling my therapist like they were a friend, and that was kind of what like eased me into at least knowing what to say. Because if I say, "Hey, I don't feel male," obviously
right,
there's going to be a question or a statement that comes back, and then wait, what do I say? Like and
right,
I kind of at least went through it with my therapist for a while. The
okay,
first that I came out with was my friend Pam and my business partner with the label.
uh
We were in
huh,
Toulouse 2021, and I came out to her in person, and that was then freeing because then I felt safe around people, and I was starting to present around friends rather than just strangers. Of like, this is me,
right,
and that was nerve wracking as fuck. But it just kind of kept getting easier and easier.
right,
What was the point where I just stopped giving a fuck what anybody thought, or kind of
Hell
just
yeah.
stopped
all
being
right,
afraid? Um, 2020, like June or July, me and a few friends, we did a bufo ceremony. Excuse me,
okay,
bufo, 5-MeO DMT.
okay, yep,
It's like a poisonous frog thing. I smoked it with a shaman, and literally was a huge life changing experience because like it was a very short 10-15 minute experience, but
uh huh,
like from the journey, I got a few like downloads that like just have stayed with me since that day.
okay,
And it's just been one of the big ones was like I don't need to prove myself to anybody. So like if people like me for being me, cool. If you don't, that's
yeah,
great. And just it kind of made me really stop caring what people thought. And since then,
right,
I'm out and just not giving a fuck what people thought.
right.
Like
Yeah,
Well,
that's
never
one
really,
of the cool parts.
that
go ahead.
that's a tough. Well, that's I was going to say that's a tough thing to get to, you know, mentally when you've been trained your whole life. Like, oh, there's something wrong with me. But I think Chad was going to say
Yeah,
something
that's
as
that's
well.
one of the cool parts is when you finally cross that bridge, that threshold of I'm not for everybody, but this is me, you know? And that's like fucking one of the best things that's come from like my recovery journey too is just like I'm just me. I'm not fucking here for you. I'm not here for anybody else. I'm here to be the best version of me that I can be. And that's it. You can take it or fucking leave it at
Right.
this point, you know? And I could only imagine that having to deal with, you know, all the other stuff you've had to deal with. That's pretty fucking awesome, though, that you know, a ceremonious type of thing brought those like full-fledged deals forward that you've been able to stick with.
Since then, I feel like I've been like unfuckwithable. Like people can't necessarily bring me down. Like
I like
you
that
know,
word, unfuckwithable.
because it's like people still talk shit. I'll even post content and someone will post cringy. I'm like, cool, thank you. Like does any
Yeah.
of that matter? And
Right.
ceremony, 5 messages that I got that were literally life changing was one bad bitch. Like I never that was the first message I got. And a
Uh
bad
huh.
bitch, confident female. And for so long I was always hiding that part about me. I'm like, you know what? Regardless of how I look or not, like that is me. I am a bad bitch. Another one
Uh-huh.
was gratitude, because so many people in my journey, whether music wise or gender wise, even up to that point, have been supportive of me being me. And I'm like, whether everybody likes me or not, I do have people that I'm incredibly grateful for that have been on my side.
Mm-hmm.
Another one was fun, because I could definitely say, and I feel like lots of musicians could agree with this, with being workaholics, where I just like work to work sometimes. And
Yeah.
it's like, you know what, lay off the gas and just have fun.
Right.
One was, like I mentioned earlier, not needing to prove myself to anyone. That was like, for so long I felt like I needed to be what everybody else wanted to be liked rather than just be me. And once that one came, I was like, I don't care. Like, I'll do whatever the fuck I want, and that's it. And then the last one
Right.
is what I still struggle with, because I feel like part of it is is my purpose, but the last one was that I am so much more than just my music. Because sometimes as a musician, creative, I identify as just that, whereas there is so much more to me than just the music and the art that I create.
Right.
Yeah,
Messages
of
have
course. I'm
definitely,
sure a lot of people probably struggle with that.
it's tricky.
Yeah.
Like, I know in the most time sometimes, like I was up till 4 writing a trance song, and I was like in it, I'm like, but this isn't me. Like, this isn't like only me. Like, there's more things. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I like to do other stuff besides that. Yeah. It's not like I have to totally immerse myself in it to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but
Basically.
that was
Hey, I got a question for you though. Have you ever circled back with your dad? Because I know, you know, he left at an early age.
so. Yes, short answer, yes.
Okay.
Explain that. So he left at like 16ish, and like during my 20s ish, he would come back once a year or twice a year, and we might see him to grab food, and then he would like hand me $50 for like a birthday present that he was never there for. So we never
Right.
like great relationship during that part. And then like during therapy, I kind of had like that same thing. I'm like, my dad's just never been there, and I don't know if that's why I had the drug issue or why
Right.
I couldn't say how I felt gender wise at the time, but like he like just wasn't there. And the
Mm-hmm.
weird thing is, shortly after that, or actually before I even get to that part, like COVID would call, and I was
Mm-hmm.
still pale at the time, and he would like call, and we're in lockdowns, maybe have not talked in like a year or so, and he's like wanting to talk to me. Keep in mind, he's like in Mexico or whatever, and like 3 minutes
Right.
in to his son that he rarely talks to, he's like, "Oh, it was good talking to you." I'm like, "You're already trying to get off the phone? Like, we haven't talked in a year, and
Right.
hey, are you seeing anyone? How's work?" And then this and that, and then like, "Oh, it's good talking to you." I'm like, "Wait, what?" And that's kind of how the relationship had been for a while. So I had that bufo ceremony, and that ceremony was incredibly powerful. Like, I had friends that weren't gendering me correctly at the time, and I was even like, "Dude, I tell you, these are my pronouns. Respect them." But so shortly after the ceremony, I'm talking to my father, and the conversation was going to be one of those where it's like, "Oh, it's good talking to you." I'm like, "Wait, you keep doing this," and I'm like, "You've already never been in my life." And I literally said, "I never hated you. I just feel like you failed me and you just were never around." And I'm like, and at that point
Right.
I was 36 or 30 something. And I'm like,
Right.
how does it feel that your 36-year-old kid, you know nothing about?
Right.
And I wasn't trying to make him cry. I was just literally saying, like, I guess what I always felt. And I was like, I always wanted you to be there, whether it was teaching me how to shave or
Sure.
I like a girl and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And you were never there.
So
And
you were voicing your resentment to your
I
dad.
don't know that it
Yeah.
was resentment. It was more full on disappointment. Like, I never hated
Yeah.
him. It was
Yeah.
just
Okay.
like you missed out on a lot. Like I know
Right.
how dope I am and how dope my sister is, and he had his own shit, and I get it. But like, he definitely missed out. I did say he's got 2 other kids outside of my sister and I, and I'm like, at least now it seems like you're getting it right. But like, he definitely didn't with me. So I told him that, and he's full on tears. So he's said he'd make an effort to be back around more. So since then, he's actually come to visit me in LA twice, which has been cool.
Hell yeah.
What I
Right.
really like about that is I have a half sister that, because my relationship with my father has gotten a little bit better, I've developed a relationship with my half sister, and she is very similar to me in a way. She's creative, she's got her own business, and we have so many similarities, which is really cool. Like, she does photography, whereas I'm working in visual arts now. Also, she used to play instruments, so like I've clicked really well with my sister, which is cool because now I have 2 sisters, where before I only really had my one. So he's not super around, but to some degree, I'm at peace with it. Like,
Okay.
the parent that I have the deeper relationship is my mother, but she's
Sure.
been there. She's
Well,
been there.
and then how did your mom accept it? I'm assuming your mom was very accepting of who you were.
Mom was hella shocked. Um,
Okay, was she? Huh? Okay,
she was. It was the hardest person to tell.
really? Okay.
I told my sister, so it was a trip. I don't know the year, but it was like in September, maybe 2018 or 19, and I just
Uh
knew I
huh.
needed to tell them. And I told my like they were both in LA visiting, and I went for a walk with my sister to like Trader Joe's, and I told my
Hmm.
sister, and somehow that like I don't know what came over me, but that was the calmest I ever was like saying that to anybody. But she
Right.
was honest about it. It was just like just listening, asked great questions. And I was like, I felt like safe. Sister flies back home, and mom's still here, and I knew I needed to like tell her. Like it felt like the time, but then it was like eating me up, and mom could tell something was wrong, and then because I was like depressed and just like something's wrong. And when I told her, she's hella shocked.
Uh huh.
First thing, she's like, "I love you regardless of who you are." She's like, "I just love you."
Right.
She still hella can't believe this. So, mom for the longest time.
Was that your mom's exact words? Hell, I
Well,
can't believe this,
I was
bro.
very, like it was. I was very good at hiding that.
Yeah. Okay.
Like I just got used to like no one's gonna like this, so let me just not be this.
Yeah.
And
Let me keep it a secret and bury it and not be my true self.
exactly.
Yeah.
And she's been significantly better. Other family, some of them have been a little bit hard at times to like get pronouns right or stuff like that. But I did learn in therapy and through like trans support groups that, I mean, just thinking about how hard it was for me to accept myself and
Uh
call
huh.
myself what I am, it's the same family. So like it took me 30 plus years to like be honest with myself. So
Sure.
my whole family was always calling me he and Mark, and that was a very long time for them to have that. And now it's like, hey, this isn't what it is. It's been
Sure.
a process. But the people that have been most supportive, one, my sister, my mom, but it just took her a minute. And then some
Uh
cousins,
huh.
some of my cousins, just because the younger generation is significantly more exposed to queer communities, um,
Right.
they from the get go have been right on board, super supportive, never missing pronouns or anything like that. I was
Right.
like that's super exciting because I know how fearful I was coming out, at least in
Right.
essentially my generation, but like younger generations, essentially seeing
Sure.
how it is in general in lots of parts of the country. Like now, my cousins are still in Chicago, and there's an
Right.
openness where, which has really been pretty cool.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I've seen, I mean, I'm significantly older than all of you in this room and on here, but I've definitely seen progress as far as acceptance, from the 70s, and into the 80s, and the progression of where it is, you are who you are, and it's
I like
just
how you down pitch that from the 70s.
yeah, well, it was like I'm a little old, but it's just like I've seen it, just the progression, as well as just racism and all that kind of stuff. I've seen progress with that, and I think I've seen some definite positive moves on, hey man, just you are who you are, and it's okay to be that person,
And in fact, before coming out, I feared not getting career opportunities because of that. I felt like, excuse me, I felt like me being myself would like limit me, and
Right.
quite the opposite was true. Like since coming out, all the right people have come to my life, and in
Right.
fact, this is the record. This show's probably coming out afterwards, but like in 4 days, I'm actually DJing my first queer event, which I've never ever DJed
Oh,
a queer event.
cool.
That's actually really cool. Like I'm going out to Palm Springs, and it's really cool to now get involved with my community that I guess for so long I was like, nope, that's not me, and
Yeah.
I'm really excited about it. So it'll be like a really cool thing. So
Oh yeah, yeah. The community knows how to party and have a good time.
the weird thing is like
Uh,
I felt at home at like the gay bars, it's say like because I never identified as a gay male, and a lot
well,
of
and that's a different thing. So I mean, that's and that's something that you will learn to you'll migrate to whoever you want to be migrate to. You know what I mean?
Correct. Yeah. But yeah.
Well, dude, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. I think this is an important story, out there, because I'm sure there are young, Alexas out there that, are struggling with this. So I think it's good that we're talking about it, and that you are, you are who you are.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah. And so is there any kind of advice you would give anybody out there, either, with recovery and or, coming out?
With coming out, real talk, it definitely gets better. And I know that I've heard that with any of the LGBT things, but I know how terrified I was at the early days and all of that, and all of that definitely gets way better. One is as long as you're able to come out safely. I was fortunate, like I didn't live at home. It's not I would not have been kicked out of anything, but at least my home life wasn't jarred when I came out.
Right.
So like as long as you're safely able to come out, like the right people will come to your side. Some people have distanced themselves, but they just weren't meant to stay along for the ride, and that's it. So
Right.
I would just say, one, be yourself, because that is how you live the life that you really are supposed to.
Right.
In terms of substances, that's one I'll say is, moderation, I'll say, is key. I knew that I wasn't doing very well with the moderation. So for me, it was just like, I just don't need this in my life anymore, because it only was hurting me. So I guess have a good support system around you. Like I was fortunate that I didn't need rehab or the 12-step program, but I did have really people that were rooting for me to not be an addict anymore and to just clean up.
Sure.
And like looking around at essentially the life that I've built since that, I am incredibly grateful that I am now on the other side of all of that. Like How We Connected was the post that I made. And I'm very grateful that I'm at a point where I can make a joke about it. With the post that I made was like me with a little bottle of like, which
it was funny. I'll tell them it was basically, a typical sack that you would have cocaine in, but it had like a little miniature Coke in there. And I saw that and I was like, oh, cool. Good for her, man.
And then the next slides, I was like, my business partner was like shooting me for that. I was like, we should make this fun. So then the next ones I had like paraphernalia. I rolled up a bill, like if I was snorting it, because I'm like, I need to at least have fun with this. That was definitely a very dark chapter in my life that like I'm very grateful for. But
well, I'm glad you're out of it. I'm glad you're out of it, and I'm glad you're exploring and finding your so-called tribe. The
last step I'll say is, if you're battling addiction, do not be afraid to ask people for help.
Oh yeah, 100%.
They want help, and sometimes it is very scary for that. Like essentially, that was me asking mom for help was an example of how that got me on the journey that got me clean. So
that is 100% a tough thing to do, is to be honest with yourself and admit to yourself that you actually need help and it's out of control for you.
Yeah, when you hit your bottom, like realize that and honestly ask for help, because sometimes you can't do it alone. So sometimes you can, but sometimes, like literally, I'm very grateful for the people that helped me not relapse as often, or just eventually just get clean. And, yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, cool. Well, I appreciate you coming on. You want to shout out anything, or have people follow you anywhere, or where can they reach out to you, or whatever?
You could follow me online. My main platform is Instagram, but I'm everywhere at EMMBER Music.
Okay.
If you message me, I'll usually answer. Whether it's music, gender journey, drug addictions, anything like that, I'm down to help. For other music, I have a record label, Better Together Records. So that's at bettertogetherrecords.com. We have a couple new releases coming out, and we have a cool podcast showcasing some pretty cool artists. So
nice.
Hell yeah.
Well, cool. Well, I appreciate you coming on. And then who do we have next week? We got
my friends that own a record store that she is in recovery, dude.
Cool.
She owns 2 record stores in downtown.
Oh, in McKinney. Yeah, right. Okay. Well, cool. Well, be sure to like, subscribe, all that kind of good stuff. And then remember, kids, there is no magic pill for sobriety, because if there was, we would all take too many.